Okay, we got a big topic here. Big as in it's very controversial. I'm coming from the outside. I've quite a bit of experience outside of dirt bike advanced tuning and running into something like the Lectron. If you have tuning challenges, you're probably gonna run into Lectron or SmartCarb as a solution or a magic bullet. And the thing with the thing with it is, more often than not, you hear about this elevation compensation feature that's just amazing. And if you stop to think about it, again, I have extensive experience with powertrains and engines and developing engines at a professional level and personal. If there's a technology out there that can compensate for density altitude, which is combining density altitude is the correct term to be using here when saying elevation compensation, because the engine doesn't actually doesn't really care about how far it is off the ground. It just cares about the relative density of the air. So on a very cold day, you could be at a very low elevation, or the engine would think it's at a low elevation, or there can be a super hot and humid day and the engine would react as though it's at a higher elevation. So that's density altitude. So your elevation might be static. If you have some property that's 500 feet above sea level, it's going to have a huge swing throughout the year as far as the actual density altitude that your equipment experiences. So let's get into this. How does a carburetor work? Let's look at this aviator fuels drop carburetor by the vacuum created on the downstroke of the piston. As air accelerates through the venturi, it creates a low pressure area and velocity of the air increases. And the rapid acceleration causes the air in the fuel to mix and vaporize. How does the carb work? Okay, UTI. So we got the venturi accelerates the air, which drops the pressure and it increases the velocity. And then since there's a pressure differential, the atmospheric pressure would push that out because there's a pressure differential. This is high. This becomes a higher pressure, and this becomes a low pressure. Therefore, you have a flow. So now let's look at this Lectron. How does the Lectron compensate for elevation? Okay. So this is a claim. Companies make claims all the time. There's no traditional jets because there's a needle in place of the jet. Yeah, but how? So they're making a claim. Reverse current effect. Okay, reverse current effect. What is that? Okay, that's a made-up term. I suspected that's a made-up. That's like an internal company lingo. Okay, so their claim is a low-pressure pocket is what it's looking like. Much finer. Yes, they do. See how they say, well, elevation or weather changes because they're talking about density altitude. So that's a made-up word. So what percentage does that compensate? You know, maybe there's a 50% compensation versus fuel injection. I don't think we're going to get that level of analysis here. For instance, let's say in automotive, they're 99% effective in compensating for density altitude changes and weather. So is electron 80% of that? Is electron 50% of that? Hey, if we're making claims, I'm claiming it's 0 to 5%. Okay, so we have any more elevation here. So it's just those three. Okay, let's check another. See this FAQ here. Find. Do I have to tune it? Yes. No. Once set, it will compensate for most most density altitude changes. Of course. Okay. I plan to go to the dunes or snow biking. Do I need to tune? Okay, so do I need to go to a hot place where there's thin air? So this would be a high density altitude, assuming it's summertime. Or here, you know, it's winter time. They're out in the snow and the cold. So that would be a very low elevation density altitude. So I plan to go high elevation or low elevation. Do I need to tune my carb? Yes. Okay, this is interesting. While the electron can compensate for elevation, temperature, etc., so density, altitude, you can compensate. While the electron can compensate for density, altitude, it cannot compensate for increased load on the engine. Okay. This should be clarified. I will accept that they may have misspoke here, but as it is written, this is nonsense. It does not make sense. So so to get into my brain with my experiences, what I'm looking at here is you're going up a 10-degree grade, and now you're going up a 30-degree grade. So a grade is going to be how steep like a slope is. Let's say you're on a motorcycle or a dirt bike. You're going up a hill. So the hill was not so steep, so the load was lower, and then now so that's why this does not make sense to me, and why I'm saying it does not make sense under this context. So because they're talking about, this is implying that the load on the engine changes the fuel metering. Okay, so we're done with this. And then now we're getting into forums where people are just parroting. Okay, so let's go to the SmartCarb. Same question. How does SmartCarb compensate for elevation? Should there be a space there? No. So let's go to our official SmartCarb. Let's see. So here we go. Correct, no jetting. So again, I'm focused on the claims of compensating for density altitude. I'm not saying these do not run good, either Electron or SmartCarb. I'm not saying they do not perform. I am only picking on this change in elevation claim because it is one of the greatest inventions of mankind to have a basic carburetor compensate for density altitude. But what I suspect, like I've been saying, is it compensates to a minute level where they can sleep at night and make that claim. Okay, so you see how the Electron had this, pressure pocket reverse current effect made up word. Okay, so now we're over here and doing some completely different technology here that's supposed to compensate for elevation. This patented feature communicates both atmospheric pressure and manifold absolute pressure into the float bowl, driving fuel flow proportional to both air density and velocity in real time. So the greatest invention in the world is hidden away. To you guys saying, read the patent. Okay, there's so many patents out there. I'm not wasting my time going through a bunch of, especially just a patent. Have you ever read a patent? No. Okay, this is the greatest technology, one of the greatest technologies of all of mankind is this right here. And it's explained to us in one sentence. And then they go follow, therefore it's awesome and it compensates for. And I can't help myself. We got to jump in to paint here. So we got the SmartCarb, and then they got their Smart Scoop at the top here. So we got a throttle slide, and then let's slightly open the throttle slides here. We'll do a kind of part throttle. I mean that's quite a bit of power if you're on a big engine. That the typically SmartCarbs and Lectrons go on big engines. So you are screaming. We don't even have to go to full throttle. Okay, so let's color in the area where the airflow goes. We'll go green. All right, the air is rushing in. And we'll do the super scoop here. Now, do you see where I'm getting at? Here, we'll draw. Okay, we got a side profile. And we'll get we got our air scoop here. And then we got a throttle slide here. So now we got air. We got air coming in. And the air's, so we're at partial throttle. I mean, this is a decent cruise area. Or wait, did the elevation compensation say it only works at wide open throttle? Anyway, so we're not doing wide open throttle stuff here. We're looking at this altitude compensation claim. Okay, it didn't say only at wide open throttle. Okay, so the air comes in like this. Right? Oops, well, we better go to a thicker line here. So the airflow is typically like that. It's going to go down, and there's going to be a big stagnation zone here. Okay, that's a bunch of bullshit. No. The highest velocity air, it's going to come in here, like this. Okay? Come on, get real. What is this doing up here? This does nothing, guys. It's a vent. Okay, let's get out of there. So we have this fuel system unofficial tuning guide. I mean, this is from their website. So let's look. Okay. Whoa, okay. The SmartCarb is like to be radically less expensive and less complicated. I bought my SmartCarb on the chance it would live up to one of those claimed benefits, but it's turned out to be good enough for me to stop waiting. Is that implying it didn't work, but it's good enough? Okay. Okay. Here we go. The explanation of this. The altitude compensation channel above the intake venturi, the scoop. Allows the float bulb pressure to always be equivalent to the air pressure in the SmartCarb's venturi. What? So the what? Okay, so that little scoop pressurizes the bowl to be equivalent to the air pressure in the SmartCarb venturi. So let's go back to how a carb works. So it's saying that instead of this going to atmospheric pressure, it's into the scoop. So then this pressure will match this pressure? Wait a second. So the pressure in here is going to match the pressure in here, is what I read. That means there's no pressure differential and there's no flow. So, okay, so that sentence, again, hey, I have to give in benefit of the doubt that that's a typo and they thought something other than what they typed. Okay, so that does not make sense. Again. How convenient. Causing nozzle to... Okay, so we have the cause in a fraction of a sentence, and then the effect is one of the greatest inventions of all of mankind. Okay, so, oh, wait. Oh, shit. Okay, so provides instant ambient pressure. So, vent a carburetor provides, instant pressure, atmospheric pressure, I agree. Oops, it's density altitude. So again, this is like a claim in like an fraction of what this. It doesn't explain anything. So if I'm trying to reverse engineer this the basic concept, I still don't understand. It's not working. It is there. Where is the explanation? So what I would like to say is that all carburetors compensate for altitude at some level. So here's the traditional carburetor. And we have the, so let's go into the math here, and our buddy here at Organic Chemistry Tutor is going to show us how air density, so here's that formula, and then we want this delta P. So he gets us to this delta P, and that's what we should look at here. So the change in pressure, so the difference in pressure would be this pressure differential here. That's P1 and P2. Okay? That's basically because this is connected. We're making assumptions here. There's going to be some, but this is the overall concept is right. Stop it. Okay, listen. So this is P1 and this is P2. So that's pressures. So we have the difference in pressure is controlled by rho. That's not a P, that's rho. And so what we're looking at is rho is air density. So as air density changes, that's going to change your pressure differential. Is all I'm showing. I'm showing the math, foundational math, and you could sometimes look at the equations and just pick out that variable and see how it affects the equation. So this is a multiplier. So that's going to change your pressure differential. So the air density altitude changes, that's going to change your pressure differential. So that's going to change the force, or how much fluid is going to be lifted with how much pressure. basically. That pressure differential, so the larger the pressure differential, the more flow, generally speaking. So that's why I'm saying a standard carburetor already compensates slightly for density altitude. And you'll notice in this marketing language on these websites, they're not comparing it to a traditional carburetor. They're not saying this is better than a traditional carburetor because it does that, because they know that a traditional carburetor already compensates. So what they're not telling us is they may have only a 3% improvement in density altitude changes over a standard carburetor, where the feeling is 3% more off at a higher altitude with a traditional carburetor. Let's say, for instance, or I'm saying the point is it's some tiny number where they don't want to share it because they're embarrassed, but it's a big enough number, or it's a measurable number where they are comfortable making these very bold claims. And then finally, let's jump back into YouTube and let's just start doing this. Paramotor, 18,000 feet. These guys are running chainsaw carburetors. Walbro. Look at all these different pilots, different occasions. 18. There's probably 15s out there. So watch these videos. How are they making it under power to these altitudes? Here's a new one right there. $14. We got Kahlo. All right, so these guys are taking off from, let's say, near sea level, 600 feet, 200 feet, MSL, 1,000 feet MSL, doesn't matter. They're still going tens of thousands of feet up with a chainsaw carburetor, a Walbro. $37. Here we go. We got a chainsaw carburetor, and that's even a PPG site. Okay, so I will conclude that the Lectron or the SmartCarb are cult-like, like the communities behind it are cult-like. And another thing to say is that they are effective in that they're designed with the needle jet, not having transitioning between jets is an advantage. I agree. And finally, there is no altitude compensation that's worth noting because it's marketing lies. And this is not a selling point for the Lectron or carburetor. And once again, a carburetor that effectively adjusts and compensates for density altitude is one of the greatest inventions of mankind. And then some of you may argue that invention is fuel injection, and I'm not going to deny that.